patrons, and welcome to lesson 6. Oh, no, part 6. Hi, patrons. Welcome to part 6 of our Kingdom Death paint along. In today's video, we're going to cover non-metallic metal silver and object source lighting. The paints we'll be using in today's video are Nightmare Black, Wolf Gray, Leather White for our non-metallic metal silver. I'm going to keep it fairly simple. This will be something that we've covered in an earlier video, so it's just practicing what we've learned. And then also we're going to do really quick and simple object source lighting. And for that, all I need is my heavy body titanium white and my lantern yellow. And we're going to get started with the object source lighting right now. The last video that we did for object source lighting, I explained 2 different types of techniques I apply when I'm painting object source lighting. For this one, I'm going to use the easier technique where I simply have my Liquitex white and I'm going to paint my lantern white and then come in with my lantern yellow and touch the lantern with some of the yellow and also areas around the lantern. I'm going to do this because I don't want the lanterns to be the main focus of the miniature. And also, I don't want it to be an overwhelming object source light effect. Liquitex white is so thick. All right. I'm going to be starting with the lanterns. You can see that I have already primed them white, but I'm going to want to take a little bit of my straight titanium white, and of course I thin it down because it's a heavy body. And I'm gonna want to go back in and add some more white to that lantern. We do this because we want this to be the brightest thing on the miniature, in a sense, to give it the idea that this is lit. So that helps you sell the idea when you paint this white first and then go back over the areas with the yellow. So I'm just painting the white into where the lantern is, where that light is going to be. And I always do this for any kind of light source or anything that's glowing on a miniature. All right, so for this, I'm going to let these dry for a second, but I will talk about placing my light source. Since the light isn't that bright, and I'm just kind of going in and adding a little bit of glaze. If I wanted to make the light source stronger, I would probably come back in and highlight these areas more and make these areas brighter. But for just ease of use and just to make the lanterns look like they're glowing a little bit, I'm not going to go over the top and treat the areas around the light source like it would be dark everywhere else. All right, now I'm just going to take the lantern yellow and I'm going to thin it a little bit so I make a controlled wash. And I'm going to take it here and I'm gonna try to not hit, if you do, it's okay, kind of go around the outsides of the lantern there and leave the middle area white. Just kind of go around, and it's not a lot of paint. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in with the paint colors I have for my non-metallic metal, and I'm just going to paint the lantern after I paint the light source here with those same colors. And I'm going to take that same amount of the lantern yellow. I'm just going to kind of brush it around where the lantern would be. Not too much. You don't want to go crazy with this. Kind of just applying the yellow kind of hints at that glow from the lantern. And you don't want it to go too far. I might bring it here. And if I can't see it, I might go back with my pink that I painted this cloth with. I might even take my white, actually. Let's try that real quick. And kind of throw some white on there, just to bring up the color on the cloth. And then when that dries, I'm going to go back over it with white. And you won't see, or with, with the lantern yellow. And you won't see the white anymore. It'll just be the yellow. And I might do that a couple times. I don't think it's dry yet. So we'll come back to it. Again, just using the straight lantern yellow. And then when I'll come back and paint the rest of the lantern, I'll probably come back in here. Since this is a leather a little bit, I can take some of the leather white that I have and also put it here and come back over with the yellow. And again, a little bit of that yellow on the areas directly under the lantern, kind of in visual range of the lantern. And like I said, I might come back with the leather white or even the white, kind of pick out these details even though I've already painted them, paint them white, so I can go back over and it really shows the highlight like we did with the cloth on the other lantern. Just to make that light source more convincing. I'm trying to make it so it kind of blends smoothly here. So there's a nice fade. All right, let's come back to that piece of cloth over here. And you can see how placing it on top of that white kind of makes that light source pop. And I might do that a couple of times just to make it convincing, so you can see the yellow on the cloth. And just an easy way to get this technique. I'm going to go back in and put a second layer of yellow since it dried, and it dried a little lighter. And again, there I'm taking that white, and I'm going to take that white, but then go back over it with yellow. And this is actually something you can do with reds. I don't know if we've talked about it before, but when I take red and I want to highlight an edge that's maybe there's a red cloth or something, I'll actually paint white, and then I'll take the red that I'm working with and paint back over that white, and it makes the red appear lighter because it's painted over something that's lighter, the white color. That's the same idea with primer, is that if you're using a lighter primer, your colors are going to be more vibrant. Just something to think about. And you can see how I kind of just really quickly brought up this area here to make it look lighter, but I didn't have to do much besides add the white, which is really neat. And just ease of use. Take a mixture of the yellow and the white, because I didn't like how that cloth looked. Go in there to give it that glow, since it's so close to the lantern. Okay, so you can see how, as long as my paint doesn't pull apart, which it's being a little bit of pain in the butt, how you can see how we built up that color, and we've got that nice glow to the fabric now, when before it was a darker color. I had painted it so it looked like it was in shadow. Okay, so we didn't go too over the top with the color here. So it's just a nice warm glow. It doesn't affect all of the miniature. It doesn't go too far out. And now I'm going to take some of the Nightmare Black I have and the Wolf Gray. Put them on my palette and paint the body of the lantern. And this is as simple as just taking the side of your brush and just kind of doing some edge highlighting here, like this, so you don't paint outside of the lines. I'm just trying to be careful of what I'm painting. So I just use the edge of my brush and just picking out the raised detail of each side of the lantern, and then the bottom. I messed up a little bit. Just kind of coming in here and painting what's white. It's hard to reach, but if I'm careful, I can get it. Yeah, flip her upside down like this. Oh no! I got the blue here. Quick, before it's dry. Grab it with a clean brush. And again, just using the side of my brush. And I do this because I feel like it helps. If I just touch the outsides here of the body of the lantern or the supports of the lantern, I feel like you still see some of the glow on the insides of the supports, which I think it's kind of a neat effect. I usually, with my Kingdom Death lanterns, I usually paint them to kind of have a wrought iron look or just a kind of not a super shiny metallic metal. And I think I forgot to put some yellow in this little window here. So we're going to go back and do that just quick. All right, so I'm going to give, just like I said, I don't want to make the metal super shiny, but I'm going to give just a little bit of highlight to the body of the lantern. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix some of my Nightmare Black up to my Wolf Gray here, just to give it a little bit of detail, mostly on the top of the lantern here, just a little bit, not too much. Oh, see, I keep messing up. I think I mess up in every video, so it just goes to show you. I think I tell you guys every time that even when you paint every day, it doesn't stop you from making mistakes. I'm just kind of making this more interesting. Just give it a little bit more detail. I might even take just a little bit of that white mixed in with the gray. Just to kind of give it a little bit of metallic shine there. Alright, now that I've done that, the last thing I want to do with the object source lighting is I want to go back in with just a little bit of my pure titanium white and add a little bit of white to the insides of the lanterns here, just in the very middle, just to reestablish some of that light where we'd gone over and it's more yellow now, just because our pure white is going to be our strong light source and to make it look like it's lit from within. So that's the last thing I do. Alright, and so now we have some painted lanterns, and we'll move on to the non-metallic metal of the swords. Now we're moving on to the non-metallic metal silver. For that, I already have some of the paint on my palette, and I don't want to waste my paint, so I've got the Nightmare Black, the Wolf Gray, and then I'm going to add the Leather White. And I'll also be using my Titanium White as long as the paint comes out of the paint bottle. Technical difficulties. There we go. I'm going, like I was saying, I'm going to be using the Titanium White for my brightest highlights. Before I start painting the sword, I'd like to talk about where I'm going to place my highlights. If you remember in the non-metallic metal video I have, what we do is we place one highlight here. So it's facing, this sword is facing up, receiving the light source. So my bright highlight is going to be at this end, and then the other end here will have a highlight. So it's it reverses. It's sort of a checkerboard, because this will be a darker color here, and this will be a darker color here. The other thing that sells non-metallic metal is the quick jumps in contrast. So while we have the light here, we have the dark here to make it look more like it's metal. The nice thing about these weapons is, if you can see, they have a nice edge. So I'm going to be following each edge of the sword here, and it also has a little bit of a blade side here as well, so I'll be hitting those with the sides of my brushes. For the video, I will not be painting the back of the sword on camera because it's extremely hard to get a good shot. But on the back of the sword, I can tilt this one, and it's the same idea. If you can see this sword in the background, because I won't be painting the back of this sword either. But it's the same idea, is that you're going to have this area here that's brighter, and this area here that's darker, or I'm sorry, this here area here on the top that's darker. This is lighter and this is darker. So it's the same idea on each side of the sword, and I just wanted to let you guys know that painting one side will help you paint the other side of the sword as well. All right, let's get started. So for me, the easiest way to start off with the non-metallic metal is to paint the whole sword, the darker or darkest color that I have, which is the Nightmare Black, and then work my way up from there. And like I said, I'll just be painting this side of the sword because it's the easiest area and easiest side to get a good clear shot for the video. I'm going to let that dry. Now that I've got the base coat, I'm going to be taking my Nightmare Black, and like we do in almost every video is mixing a little bit of it into the wolf gray. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the bulk of my paint on my paintbrush at this end of the sword and work my way up here. And the idea behind that is some of the paint, most of the paint will be deposited down here, and it'll be easier to achieve a smoother transition. And I'm not worried if I get some paint down at the bottom here. It's okay. All I have to do is go back in with the darker color. Doing a little bit of wet blending there. I put wet paint on wet paint to kind of get a transition. And now it's just working my way up to my highlight. Now I can also go on the underside here. I'm going to tip this because when I'm tipping the sword, I can almost follow, there's a dividing line right there in the sculpt itself. I can almost make my brush follow that and use that as a guide for my brush. You don't have to worry about it being too smooth. Sometimes if metal weapons and things are beat up, they kind of have divots in them, and non-metallic metal doesn't have to necessarily be smooth. You just have to have those right transitions in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the edge here. And kind of in the middle, right there, they kind of blend together. You kind of have the same color. And I'm just trying to get those transitions. You can see it starts to look good fairly quickly, adding in those two colors and those two transitions. And don't be afraid of non-metallic metal. Sometimes it's daunting, but I tell everybody when I teach non-metallic metal that it does take a lot of work and a lot of practice. It's a fun technique, and true metallic metal is good to learn too. So you have both techniques. And again, just hitting the edge right there for the time being with that brighter color. And now I'm going to take my wolf gray and I'm going to mix it into some of this leather white. And I'm going to work in smaller and smaller areas. I didn't talk about when we first started the non-metallic metal on this sword, I didn't talk about the reflection or the glow from the lantern on the other side here. You can certainly put that in kind of the same way that I would, I did the object source lighting glow on the skin. You might want to focus, let me flip it over real quick, even though it's harder to see. If you can see, I have to maneuver my brush down through the miniature here. You might want to also focus a bright light source right here, if you can get that painted in. If not, it's not the end of the world. You can do the kind of the same thing where you're hitting this would be slightly darker, this would be lighter, but you can focus more of a bright highlight here, right where the lantern's hitting, and then add a little bit of yellow to that side of the blade, just to make it convincing. It's harder to see, so it's not necessarily something you have to put in. Okay, I've worked almost all the way up to my leather white. I might want to bring it down just a little bit more, bring this transition down. And again, you can see I'm kind of, the way I'm moving the brush around is kind of, it's chaotic. It still comes out looking a little smooth, but it kind of makes her brush, or her sword, look like it's kind of seen some battle damage there. Just gonna take that straight leather white and I'm gonna try to hit this little divot in her sword here with the side of my brush. And I'm gonna come back in with the pure white too and line the whole sword. Okay, and I might, if you've kind of gone into this area where it's supposed to be dark, I might go back in with some of my darker color here and kind of bring that darker color back in. And now I'm going to take my white and I'm going to use the side of my brush like we've done before. And I'm going to use the side of my brush to kind of do that edge highlighting and catch the edges. And if I'm careful about it, I should be able to pick out this. If not, I will use just the very tip of my brush to kind of paint that in. So we're gonna go in with the titanium white. And I might even take it here at the very tip of this brush, or the brush, sword. Goodness gracious. No, I painted into the blue a little too much. Let me go back and fix that. I'm just being very delicate about it with that edge highlight. Right down here. And now I'm going to run a white line down the edge of the blade here. And I'm going to go back in because I want to redefine this dark area again. Kind of keep painting outside of my lines. And I might go and clean up that line down the middle of the sword. And again, it's just, I'm bracing my hands on the miniature. There we go. I think after I add just a little bit more white, I think I'll call that sword done. So now that the non-metallic metal is done, I will go ahead and paint the other sword off camera since it's hard to get a good shot, but it's the same idea where you're going to be placing your highlights up at the top here and down on the underside, and then dark and dark. So when you're thinking about painting the non-metallic metal, just use what we did with the first sword to paint this one. Thanks for joining us for this Kingdom Death paint along video. Tune in to the next one where we paint the base. And as always, find us on Discord, and happy painting.